Discovered how a humiliating invitation transformed America's richest billionaire's life forever. Jack Thompson stood at the edge of his lavish charity gala, a billion-dollar titan in a custom-tailored suit, when he held an envelope in trembling hands. Its contents would tear at the seams of his hard-earned success, a stark invitation to his high school reunion. Suddenly, the glitz and glamour surrounding him felt like smoke, dissipating into the cool evening air. This wasn't merely an invitation. It was a cruel reminder of a life he'd hurriedly left behind, a life filled with laughter that turned to jeers, unresolved memories of his estranged father, and friendships lost to the cruel bond of bullying. He looked out at the faces of the Silicon Valley elite, their polished smiles reflecting in the crystal chandeliers. But inside, despair gnawed at him. The first tug on Jack's heart came from the memories of grease-stained overalls and long hours under the hood of rusted cars. His roots. He'd climbed the ranks of society against all odds, yet here, holding the invitation, he felt emptier than ever. Somewhere in his glittering ascent, he lost those connections that mattered, and with them, his sense of belonging. The ambitious dreams of his youth replayed in his mind, those days when he vowed to rise above the marathon of mockery. Now, with wealth at his fingertips, he sought to share his fortune with the very community that had raised him. He decided to attend the reunion, half expecting whispers of admiration but bracing for the possibility of contempt. As he stepped into the familiar gymnasium, it was like walking through a time warp. The decorations mirrored the loneliness he had felt so many years ago, and the laughter felt like a punch to his gut. Jack tried to connect, offering donations to local charities, hoping his wealth could bridge the chasm. But the community's doubt bubbled to the surface. "Yes, changed," they muttered. Has he forgotten where he came from? Each rejected gesture cut deeper, and he felt the hot sting of shame as he stood before those who once ridiculed him, their eyes now reflecting suspicion. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The realization struck Jack hard. He was not only battling the memories of his past, but also his father's unyielding belief that hard work equated to honor. In the middle of the room, among the clicks of wine glasses and cautious murmurs, Jack's pulse raced. He needed to share his truth. "I'm not just a billionaire," he began, his voice cracking. "I'm someone who still feels the weight of those years of loneliness." The room fell silent, faces turning toward him. He shared his journey and his fears, tears glistening in his eyes as he bared his soul. Would they listen? Or would the past engulf him, leaving him stranded once more? Would he earn their respect? Or would his vulnerable moments spark more scorn? The air thickened with tension, and Jack could almost feel the threads of his family ties unravel. Gazing at the expressions of his former classmates, Jack found solace in the truth he spoke. Yet, the weight remained heavy on his shoulders. In this arena of acceptance and rejection, he felt the burning question. Could he reclaim his roots and redefine success in a world where connection was the ultimate currency? Jack's heart felt like a drum in that uneasy silence. He searched the room for a familiar face, someone, anyone, who might understand the turmoil brewing within him. Carol, his childhood best friend, was standing across the way. They'd giggled in the same treehouse, swapping dreams and secrets, but life had pulled her away in directions he could hardly fathom now. She stepped forward, her brow furrowed with concern. "Jack, is everything okay?" The sympathy in her voice pushed the dam in his heart closer to breaking. "No, Carol, it's not. I thought I could come back, show you all I've done, but now I just feel lost." The quiet murmurs around them grew louder, their whispers wrapping around Jack like an unwelcome shawl. However, Carol grasped his arm, grounding him. "You're still the same person beneath the success. Don't let their judgment change that." Her words pulled at his heartstrings, urging him to fight against the insecurities that threatened to engulf him. "But all these years I thought wealth meant acceptance," he said, swallowing hard. "Yet I feel more like an outsider than ever." With a gentle squeeze, Carol gestured toward the crowd. "Maybe it's time to redefine what acceptance means. They need to see the real you." Jack took a deep breath, looking back at his classmates. Their faces, once filled with scorn, now seemed softer. Maybe fear had kept them from engaging, just as it had kept him silent. Courage bubbled up inside him, igniting a spark of determination. He raised his glass, the clink drawing attention. The room quieted, their eyes now fixed on him again. "I stand before you today not just as your classmate who hit it big," Jack said, his voice steadier, "but as someone who still struggles with the shadows of our past. I'm here to share not just my triumphs, but the pain that brought me here." The crowd exchanged glances, and a few nods appeared among the familiar faces. In that vulnerable moment, Jack felt the barriers create waves instead of walls. He shared his childhood, the hurt, and the dark days that almost swallowed him whole. And as he poured out his heart, the connections he thought lost began to resurface. As he finished, the silence was replaced by an eruption of applause. Jack's chest surged with warmth, a reminder that vulnerability could dissolve the coldest hearts. Carol grinned wide, her eyes shimmering with pride. "I'm proud of you, Jack," she yelled, cutting through the noise. But the moment's brightness flickered as familiar voices beckoned from the crowd. "A show, Jack? Or just a play for sympathy?" Echoing laughter rumbled as he turned his gaze back to the naysayers, straining against the reality that acceptance could still be elusive. Emboldened, he stepped forward a little more, locking eyes with the voices dripping in disdain. "You're right. I am showing you my vulnerability. And what's wrong with that? We've all faced our battles. It's time we celebrate our growth together, rather than let the past haunt our future." The rattle of whispers began to fade, some faces softening into expressions full of recognition. Maybe it wasn't about wealth or power, but about rebuilding relationships that had been fractured. Could this gathering spark a revival of friendship? Or would old fears snuff out this hopeful flame? Jack's heart raced as he felt a flicker of hope. Could a shared history rewrite their future? He glanced back at Carol, and in her eyes, he found a reflection of the answer he sought. Would this newfound courage pave a way for reconciliation, or would he find himself back on the lonely path he once walked? The air crackled with possibility, and Jack could feel change whispering just beyond the horizon. Jack felt the warmth of the applause wrap around him, but the laughter from a few mocking voices still echoed in his mind. He tried to shake it off, reminding himself that he had just turned a corner. Yet doubt lingered, clawing at his confidence as he scanned the crowd, searching for supportive smiles. "Jack." Carol's voice broke through his thoughts like a beacon. "Look at them. They're listening, really listening." She gestured toward the class, where many now appeared engaged, leaning forward as if eager to hear more. "Maybe," he replied, his voice trembling slightly. "But what if they're only pretending? What if this is all for show, and the moment I walk away it's back to the way it was?" Carol shook her head, her determination unwavering. "That's your fear talking. You have to trust them in the journey you've shared. You're not alone anymore." He felt the weight of her words settle in the pit of his stomach. She was right, yet insecurities still tugged at him. Jack needed to seize this moment, to turn it into something more than a fleeting opportunity. "You think they'll understand?" he asked, a flicker of hope igniting inside him. "I know they will," she replied, her sincerity pouring into him like sunlight. "You just have to reach out." After a deep breath, Jack raised his glass again, a flicker of confidence shining through. "I want to share one more thing." Silence enveloped the room as he searched for the right words, the rhythm of his heartbeat leading the way. "As I stand here, I realize the need for authenticity runs deeper than superficial successes. Each of us carries wounds that whisper our stories, reminders of who we really are." As he spoke, the once judgmental faces began to change. They began to nod, some even exchanging glances of recognition with one another. He pressed on, telling them about the moments that shaped him, the mistakes, the failures, the love lost, all that led him to this very moment. "I spent so long chasing this idea of success," Jack confessed, emotion welling in his throat. "But I forgot that true success isn't about wealth. It's about connections, compassion, and the strength to be vulnerable." In the back of the room, a classmate he hadn't spoken to since school raised a hand. "Jack, I've been there too. It's not easy to share, but it's what we need to do. We should all be honest about our struggles." Encouraged by the sentiment, others began to chime in, sharing their own scars, their own fears. As the atmosphere shifted, each voice added strength to a growing sense of community. Jack couldn't help but smile. It was happening. The crowd transformed from a judgmental audience into a gathering of kindred spirits. Suddenly, he caught sight of the naysayers again. They looked confused, maybe even ashamed. And for the first time, Jack felt a twinge of pity for them. He said, "We've all endured hardships. If we could find a way to share our experiences, we could heal. Why not support one another instead of tearing each other down?" As the applause erupted once more, Jack's spirit soared. He felt an undeniable connection to his peers, once fractured bonds weaving tighter as laughter and camaraderie filled the space. But just as hope surged within him, another voice pierced the air. "This is all too good to be true, Jack. You think they'll actually change? Just like that?" The cynicism dripped from the words, pushing Jack back into the shadows of doubt. His heart sank, but instead of retreating, he took a deep breath. He understood that this was a pivotal moment not just for him but for them all. Would they rise together from past hurts? Or would old habits drag them back? A question lingered, heavy with uncertainty. Could their shared vulnerability spark lasting change? Jack's eyes flickered through the crowd, searching for a sign of hope. Would they all see that embracing their truth could lead to new beginnings? The air crackled once more. And for Jack, the possibility of transformation hummed on the edges of reality. Jack held his breath, the weight of the room pressing down on him. The challenge from the critic loomed large, darker than the shadows of doubt that clung to his heart. He could feel it. Hesitation hung thick in the air, dispersing the warmth of acceptance that had just begun to spread. "What if we try?" Jack called, his voice rising above silence with a newfound determination. "What if we step beyond fear? What if we decide to actually take the leap together?" A murmur rippled through the crowd, some voices echoing his sentiment. Hope flickered, and with it, Jack pushed further. "I know it's not easy. Change never is. But aren't we all tired of pretending? Tired of hiding behind masks?" One by one, faces brightened. Some began to nod, others leaning in, drawn by the passion in his tone. Chloe, a girl he remembered from childhood, spoke up next. "Jack, you inspire us. Sometimes we hide because we're scared. Scared of judgment. Scared of being vulnerable." "Exactly," Jack enthused, feeling the energy shift. "Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's our greatest strength." As he spoke, he could see barriers falling, like walls crumbling under the weight of understanding. Voices rose again, sharing stories that echoed his own. Tales of stumbles and rises, broken hearts and restored friendships. The room filled with confessions that were not just words, but shards of healing being stitched together. And then, just as hope reached its peak, the cynic spoke again. "This sounds good, Jack, but what happens the next day? What if everyone forgets? What if they just stop caring?" Jack's spirit wavered. The reality clawed at him, threatening to pull him back into despair. But amidst the noise of doubt, an unexpected surge of realization washed over him. What if that's true? But what if we try our best to make it stick? He looked straight into the eyes of the skeptic. "What if we do this together right now?" A ripple of uncertainty met his call, but then laughter erupted from the crowd. The mix shifted from unease to a collective embrace of the messy, imperfect nature of life. They were leaning toward authenticity, and it felt powerful. "Let us commit." Carol stood beside him, her voice booming, rallying that spark he'd ignited. "Let us promise each other right here, right now." A wave of energy surged through the room as hands began to rise. One person after another, each child of the past boldly committing to being real. Jack felt the warmth blossom, tangible and alive. "I promise I'll share my truth. I won't hold back," came from a gentleman in the back, and soon others followed. Jack's heart raced. The transformation was not complete, but a door had swung open. People were stepping through it, trembling but ready. His eyes scanned the room, each face reflecting a flicker of vulnerability that mirrored his own. Some smiles were shy, others wide with excitement. A spark ignited in him, fanning the flames of hope even further. Yet just as Jack began to breathe easy, another thought intruded. What would happen when they faced their first real test? Would the bonds they forged hold against the world outside? Or would they crumble at the slightest push? The excitement twisted with fear, making Jack's stomach churn. Could they all withstand the storm? As laughter rang out and pledges floated through the air, he wondered about tomorrow. The true test was just beginning and he had no way of knowing if they were ready for it. Jack stepped back, taking a quick breath to ground himself. The energy buzzing around him pulsed with life. But the question nagged at the back of his mind: how long could the excitement last? As various voices erupted in pledges of honesty and connection, his heart raced between exhilaration and fear. Across the room, Chloe leaned closer to him. "Jack, look at us. This is amazing." Her eyes sparkled with joy, and for a moment, the weight of the critic's words faded. "But what happens tomorrow?" he murmured, catching her gaze. "What happens when the thrill wears off?" She shook her head, her brown curls bouncing. "We can't worry about tomorrow right now. We just have to embrace this moment." Jack's eyes darted around the room, landing on familiar faces, each one telling their own unique story. People were nodding their heads, hands over hearts, making promises they once thought were impossible. In that moment, the room was a kaleidoscope of humanity, raw, real, and alive. Then came Carol again, a steady anchor in the whirlwind. "Let us plan a gathering tomorrow. We can check in, have coffee, share where we're at." The idea spread like wildfire, and murmurs of agreement filled the air. It felt as if they were all holding on to a lifeline, connecting over the simple yet profound power of presence. Jack felt a renewed surge of hope at the prospect. "Yes, let's South meet at the park same time. We'll create a space to keep this going," he chimed in. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the back of the room. "What if someone doesn't feel ready?" A young man's voice broke through, tinged with uncertainty. "What if they take a step back when things get tough?" A wave of silence washed over the crowd. Jack's heart sank again. What if that's part of it? He finally said, weighing his words carefully. "We're not perfect. We can stumble. But that doesn't mean we throw away our intentions." The young man nodded slowly, and several others began to murmur in agreement. Jack felt the warmth of collective support envelop him again. "Right," Chloe piped up enthusiastically. "Everyone is on their own journey. We have to be okay with that. As long as we show up, that's what matters. And even if we mess up," Carol added, "we can lean on each other. That's the whole point." Laughter broke the lingering tension, loosening the atmosphere once more. The energy shifted again, now infused with acceptance. With every shared smile, Jack felt the very essence of community pulsating, reminding him that they were not alone in this fight. Hours seemed to melt away as conversations flowed, but as the crowd began to thin, the reality of the challenges that lay ahead hung over him like a looming storm cloud. "What if I can't keep this going?" Jack whispered to himself, the vulnerability creeping back in. Chloe, sensing his unease, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Hey, it's okay to be scared. Just don't let it rule you." Their eyes connected, and for a moment, it felt as if the world outside didn't exist. "Maybe tomorrow will show us what we're really made of," he said, barely finding the courage to believe it. As they filed out, each person wrapped in their thoughts and intentions, Jack steadied himself. He wanted to believe they could weather the storms ahead, but deep down, hidden beneath layers of courage, fear pulsed strong. Tomorrow was coming, but the question lingered in his mind. What would it take to truly make a difference for all of them? With uncertainties trailing like shadows, he stood alone a moment longer, staring into the dimly lit room. The journey was only just beginning, and he wondered if he was ready for the challenge that awaited. Jack awoke the next morning with a weighty mix of excitement and dread. The sun streamed through his window, illuminating the familiar room where he often felt more alone than he'd admit. Today was the day. The gathering would unveil the fragile tapestry of connections they'd woven. But what if it all unraveled? His mind raced as he stumbled through his morning routine. Facing the mirror, he practiced a smile. "You got this, Jack," he told himself. But the words felt hollow. He felt like an actor stepping onto a stage, unsure of his lines. The park looked different in the daylight. Children laughed in the distance, while the scent of fresh grass filled the air, mingling with the light thrill of anticipation. Jack arrived early, finding a bench that offered a view of the wide-open space. He hoped it would ground him. Moments passed, stretching like the clouds overhead, and he couldn't shake the feeling of impending vulnerability. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from yesterday, the words of an encouraging few still echoing in his mind. Just show up, he whispered. That's what matters. Then, like a ripple through water, familiar faces began to appear. First Chloe, her warmth a burst of sunlight, followed by Carol, who waved as if she were welcoming a long-lost friend. Gradually, the group gathered in a tight circle around Jack, laughter and chatter filling the air, tangible support enveloping him. Meant to be here, Carol exclaimed, settling beside him. As the minutes melded into deeper connections, Jack's worry ebbed away. Now laughter and shared stories took center stage. It felt easy, like they were all meant to be sitting together at that very moment. Yet, just beneath the joy, Jack sensed the undercurrents of fear running through some of them, the uncertainty about tomorrow, the embarrassment of not measuring up. I almost didn't come, one voice admitted reluctantly, a young woman with bright eyes who had been quiet until now. What if I just fall back into old habits? Yeah, another connection chimed in, a man who had found solace in running. Every time I try to change, something knocks me down. Jack felt the heat of their raw honesty, and it struck him then. We've all been there. Every single one of us has felt that pull. It's not about not falling. It's about getting back up together. Chloe nodded, and some murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Jack's heart thumped as if the words had untangled something within them all. And what if it helps us to stumble? Carol added. Maybe that's where we find our strength. A moment of silence wrapped around them, a cocoon of deep understanding, and Jack felt a flicker of hope ignite. As the gathering continued, stories flowed like a river, each experience shaping them into something stronger. But lingering just outside the circle of warmth was the weight of silence whenever someone shared a struggle. It was as if they were all remembering the battles they fought every day alone. Seeing their faces highlighted with raw emotion, the thought struck Jack. We can create something more than just a meeting once in a while. What if we form a real support system? The group looked intrigued, and whispers of approval danced in the air. Ideas flowed back and forth: weekly meetups, running groups, coffee chats, and even something as simple as a text chain to check in on each other. But beneath all of that, a tremor of fear pulsed through him. What if I can't hold us together? He thought, the pressure of responsibility creeping back in. As the sun began to slide towards the horizon, they stood together, eyes shining with something they hadn't all felt before. Hope tinged with nervousness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, better believe it, Jack said, trying to steady his own heart. But we can face them together. The group erupted in agreement, but even as they walked away in clusters, Jack was still left standing at the edge of a new beginning. What he felt more than anything was the need to hold this all together. Could they actually do it? As he turned to leave, his heart pounded with a new fervent question. How could they transform this vulnerable start into something that wouldn't fade away? The following day was one of those overcast mornings where the sky matched Jack's mood, gray and unsure. He had spent most of the night tossing and turning, wondering if the light they had felt yesterday would dim by morning. Had their spirited discussions been mere fleeting moments, or could they actually become something real? He dragged himself out of bed, the weight of anticipation heavy on his chest. When he finally stepped outside, a brisk wind rifled through the leaves, carrying hints of rain. The morning felt promising yet ominous, much like his own uncertain future. Jack brushed his hand through his hair, trying to shake off the feeling. He had one thing on his mind: today was the day they would create a real support system. At the park he arrived early again, his heart racing. With not a soul in sight, he took the time to breathe, grounding himself in the familiar surroundings. He thought of the faces he had seen, the laughter that rang in his ears, and the worries that had shared space with their hopes. As other members of the group began to arrive, Jack noticed they manifested the same peculiar mix of excitement and nervousness on their faces. It was time to take that fragile connection and make it stronger. Each smile felt like a confirmation. They were committed to the cause. Hey everyone, he called, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Let us gather up. Chloe took her place next to him, a reassuring presence that ignited his confidence. Carol, too, sported an encouraging smile. The group formed a loose circle, and Jack stepped into the center, as if he were leading a performance, one that mattered deeply to each one of them. I want to thank you all for coming back, he began, although his heart raced as uncertainty whirled around him. Yesterday felt like a turning point. We shared our doubts, and in many ways we laid the groundwork for what could be something transformative. What do you have in mind? A tall man with glasses, someone from yesterday, leaned in. Jack took a breath, squaring his shoulders. I was thinking we could have a kickoff meeting next week. But instead of just talking, we should create small working groups based on what we want to focus on. Health, career changes, or even just checking in. I mean, genuine connections over this journey of change. A murmur of excitement rippled through the group, eyes wide with possibility. I like it, Chloe chimed in, her expression brightening. But how do we stick together when life gets tough? Accountability, Carol exclaimed, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. If we set goals and hold each other accountable, we're likely to stay on track, right? Jack nodded, the idea taking root. We could form a buddy system, too. Partner up, check in weekly, maybe even grab coffee together. Make it casual and fun. As voices melded together, the initial fear dissipated, replaced with sparks of inspiration. Ideas flickered and flew across the circle, each one building on the last. There was an undeniable energy in the air, a sense of community blooming in real time. Yet, amid the excitement, Jack felt a gnawing worry return. What if he proposed too much, promised more than he could deliver? He glanced around at their faces, hopeful, eager, yet searching for direction. Okay, so we'll meet weekly starting next Saturday. But remember, it's about support, not added pressure. He paused, eyeing each person with a gentle seriousness. We have to be honest with ourselves and each other. If something isn't working, we adapt. This isn't just for today. It's for the long run. Nods of understanding enveloped the circle, and Jack felt warmth flood him. They could really do this. They could be each other's anchors. This was no longer just an idea, it was a commitment. As they wrapped up the meeting, the sky drizzled gently, but Jack felt a spark in his heart. He looked around at the group, who were now exchanging contact information and promises. In that moment, he understood that vulnerability could forge unbreakable bonds. The journey was just beginning. But as they began to break apart, humming with excitement, Jack realized one more thing. The real work wasn't just in building connections, but addressing the doubts that lingered within him. Could he keep the momentum alive? He looked toward the horizon of dark clouds as new questions formed. Would they all be brave enough to face the storms that would inevitably come their way? Jack spent the next few days in a state of flickering anticipation. Each time his phone buzzed, his heart leaped. What if it was someone from the group? What if they had an idea, a concern, something profound to share? But most days, the messages were mundane life's trivialities filling his screen instead of the connections he craved. Still, he held on to hope. He envisioned how next Saturday's meeting would unfold. For him, it felt like a promise, a glimmer of potential that straddled the line between excitement and fear. As the days passed, he found himself wondering about each person in the circle. Did they share the same insecurities? Did they worry as much about the future as he did? On Thursday night, he found himself rummaging through an old bin of journals, searching for inspiration. Each page was filled with memories, thoughts long buried in his subconscious. He had documented his dreams for a brighter day, but he also unearthed pages filled with fear and doubt. It felt surreal to reflect on his past insecurities, the pit in his stomach when he thought of reaching for something more than what he had. Within those pages, Jack stumbled upon affirmations he had written, words of encouragement, meant to lift himself up. It struck him how much he had forgotten that the journey to change wasn't just about others, but also about himself. He needed to be gentle, to forgive his own hesitations. By Friday, the sky had cleared, revealing a bright blue canvas. It matched his newfound resolve. Before he knew it, Saturday arrived, and as he prepared, he checked off each item on his list. Water bottles, snacks, printed sheets with suggestions for discussion topics, all the little things that could help create an open space for sharing. When he approached the park, he could feel the energy buzzing in the air. People were gathering, the laughter of children playing nearby competing with the chatter of excited voices. As Jack entered, he caught sight of the familiar faces of his group, each one shining with eagerness. "Hey Jack," Carol called, her eyes glimmering with enthusiasm. "We've been brainstorming ideas all week." "That's awesome," he replied, his heart swelling. Each word exchange felt like a thread weaving them closer together. Once they all settled down, Jack felt the tremor of nerves creep back. but he pushed through it. They shared ideas, aspirations, and even small personal victories since their last meeting. Each story landed with an emotional weight, grounding the group yet lifting spirits. But then, amid the laughter and encouragement, a shadow flickered across Jack's heart. They hadn't yet discussed setbacks or the dark days that accompanied their journey. As Carol announced they should each share what they found challenging, Jack found himself sweating, his palms clammy and cold. Would his honesty help them, or would he stifle the budding hope already flourishing? "Okay, guys," he said, his voice steady yet edged with vulnerability. "I just want to admit that I'm scared, too, of this new path, of failing to lead, or of letting you all down." A heavy silence settled on the group, and Jack's voice faded. Silence reigned. But suddenly Chloe spoke softly, "You're not alone in that. We all have those thoughts." Her admission cracked the tension in the air like a lightning bolt. One by one, others shared their struggles. Fears of vulnerability, difficulty in expressing feelings, and uncertainty about future choices. Jack felt the walls of anxiety begin to dissolve. They were all in this together, and by facing the fear head-on, they strengthened each other. But just when he thought they'd found footing, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Jack snatched it up, excitement bursting through his initial worry. As he read the message, his heart sank. It was a request for help from someone he hadn't expected. What would he do? Would he take on more, potentially threatening the very foundation they had started to build together? Jack's pulse quickened as he read the message. It was from Dave, an old acquaintance from college who had always seemed to swim in a different pool of privilege than Jack. "Hey man, I hope you're doing well. I really need your advice on something big. Can we meet?" The phrase "need your advice" echoed in his mind, amplifying his unease. Once Jack had idolized Dave's lifestyle filled with lavish parties and fast cars. Now, though, he felt his own insecurities rise alongside the familiar envy. "Is everything okay?" Carol's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the lively park around them. Jack forced a smile, tucking his phone away. "Yeah, just an old friend reaching out." He glanced around at the group, now intertwined with shared fears and laughter. He didn't want to disrupt the fragile connection they had just built. As they resumed sharing, the warmth of camaraderie enveloped Jack again. Yet he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that came with Dave's message. Did he really want to attend to someone else's problems when he was still wrestling with his own? What did this invitation mean? He had finally taken a step towards a community built on support and accountability. But would he risk it all for a fleeting connection from his past? The meeting flowed smoothly, conversations spiraling into deeper topics: mental health, the challenges of balancing personal growth and relationships, and tomorrow's uncertainties. By the time they finished, Jack felt like he had metamorphosed, shedding layers of doubt, edging closer to the person he wished to be. The evening glow cast a serene light over the park, mirroring the newfound clarity blossoming within him. As they packed up, though, the weight of Dave's request sat heavy in his chest. "Hey guys," Jack said, suddenly overwhelmed, "I got a message from someone asking for help. I guess I'm just unsure whether to dive back into that world. I don't want to lose what we've built here." "Sounds like a crossroads moment," Chloe remarked, her voice thoughtful. "Can be easy to slip back into old patterns. But what about this new road? Are you willing to fight for it?" Jack felt the eyes of his friends on him, and for a moment, his heart raced. The tension between obligation and self-preservation stretched taut in his mind. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the budding promise of connection he had found with these kindred spirits. They had opened up their hearts to him, and the thought of slipping back into isolation felt like betrayal. "But what if it means I can't give my all to you guys?" he muttered, unsure. Carol stepped forward, her brown eyes steady and fierce. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Jack. Figuring out what you need doesn't mean you're abandoning us. It means you're being honest." In that moment, Jack realized that every choice he made would shape his journey. The warmth of reassurance wrapped around him, igniting a fierce sense of determination. Yet, the gnawing anxiety about how to respond to Dave loomed large. As they walked out of the park together, laughter tailing behind them, Jack held tightly onto the reminder of what could grow here. He needed to untangle his feelings and address them head-on. Taking a deep breath, he felt the push and pull of his past and future colliding within him. What would he say to Dave? Would it draw him back into old habits? Or could it mark the beginning of a new chapter? One where he learned to balance these worlds? The answer lingered just out of reach, like a thread waiting to be pulled. Jack woke up feeling renewed yet anxious. He stared at his phone, the lingering message from Dave still ringing in his mind, demanding his attention. He had spent so much time building this new connection with his support group, but now he stood at a crossroads where old and new lives collided. As he poured his morning coffee, the scent of brewing beans grounded him. His thoughts drifted back to yesterday. Laughter and shared stories echoed in his heart. He felt lighter, yet the flicker of doubt tugged at him. Would reaching out to Dave pull him away from what he had fought so hard to build? Just breathe, he told himself, staring at his reflection in the kitchen window. You've got this. By mid-morning, the sun warmed his skin as he walked to the designated cafe, a place where his new circle had agreed to gather that Saturday. Anticipation coursed through him, mingling with nerves. The moment he stepped inside, he spotted familiar faces: Chloe, Carol, and a small gathering of their classmates, all rounding off their discussions with joy and solace. Jack. Carol waved him over, her laughter buoyant as it broke through the room as chatter. The sight of their bright smiles eased the tension coiling in his chest. Hey everyone, Jack replied, feeling the warmth of acceptance wrap around him as he settled in. Throughout their conversations, Jack shared his struggles openly. I got a message from an old friend who wants to reconnect, but I don't know if it's a good idea, he confessed, hesitating to fully dive into the truth. Why don't you? Chloe nudged gently. If you think it'll help you move forward, why hesitate? Because he's from a time when I wasn't the best version of myself, Jack replied, the warmth fading slightly. He represents that world I'm trying to move past. But part of me is afraid to close that door completely. Maybe it's not about closing the door, Carol interjected, her eyes sparkling with understanding. Maybe it's about seeing what you can gain from it while still holding on to the connections you've built here. And maybe setting boundaries. Jack felt a flicker of relief wash over him. They understood. You think it can work? Absolutely. Chloe nodded, leaning in closer. You just need to ensure that he respects the person you've become. Those words echoed in Jack's mind, like a beacon guiding him through the fog of uncertainty. Could reaching out to Dave add something meaningful to his life instead of dragging him back? The next time, he said, a newfound confidence swelling within him. My goal is to embrace both sides of myself. To carry the strength I've found in this community into those past relationships. The support group erupted into cheers at his declaration. Excitement pulsed like electricity through the air. Tomorrow I'll respond, he resolved, a flicker of determination igniting within him. And I'll set those boundaries. Their meeting wrapped up in lively chatter, and Jack felt the protective warmth surrounding him. For the first time in a while, he felt not just comfortable, but ready to face challenges head-on. With new connections and renewed resolve, he felt powerful amidst the familiar faces. As the day faded into dusk, he turned the idea of tomorrow over and over in his mind. That evening, with nerves dancing in his belly, Jack sent a thoughtfully crafted message to Dave. He knew that the conversation might stretch and pull, but he was ready. He set standards for their exchange, framing it as an opportunity for growth, rather than a return to old habits. The next day, sunlight broke through the clouds, bringing an excited energy. Jack arrived at the cafe, heart racing as he waited for Dave. When the door swung open and Dave entered, Jack felt a lump forming in his throat, heightened memories and anticipation swirling within him. Jack, great to see you. Dave extended a hand, flashing a familiar smile. Thanks for coming. Jack motioned him to sit face to face. As they began to reminisce, an unexpected sense of ease washed over him. They navigated through light-hearted banter, the past momentarily lifting, like smoke in the breeze. However, Jack soon had to steer the conversation back to the raw truth that sat heavy in the air. Look, Dave, Jack started, trying to stay steady. I want us to connect, but I have to be upfront. I've transformed since those days. I want you to know this is the Jack who has fought for authenticity and connection. Sometimes it feels fragile. Dave shifted, his smile faltering slightly. Yeah, I get that. People change. Right, and I want to be honest. If you want this to be a friendship, it needs to respect who I am now. I can't go back to who I was before, not at the cost of what I've built. A flicker of shadow crossed Dave's face. I've been struggling too, Jack. That's why I reached out. I feel lost and could use some direction. Jack's heart softened, realizing they both shared a struggle for acceptance in the face of uncertainty. The vulnerability sparked a different kind of dialogue, one that held space for understanding. As they continued, Jack felt the balance shifting from fear to connection. The truth spilled out between them. They shared their stories, dreams, regrets, and fears. Jack saw the cracks in Dave's armor and recognized a reflection of his own battles. Maybe this meeting could carve a new path for them both. By the time they parted ways, Jack felt invigorated. Not just for himself but for what this meant, a stepping stone toward building bridges where he once saw only walls. Back at the park, he hopped into the conversation with his support group, bubbling with excitement. Today was incredible. I reconnected and set boundaries that honored my growth. His friends cheered him on, a palpable energy wrapping around the circle. Together, they were every bit part of each other's journeys, sculpting a future where kindness and honesty thrived. As night fell, Jack realized that with every connection, he was learning that true transformation wasn't about erasing the past, but rather allowing it to coexist. With every bond strengthened, they turned those moments into blooming friendships, fragile but resilient. With renewed confidence, Jack whispered to himself, "Together we are unstoppable." And for the first time in a long while, he truly felt it. This is where the story could end, but closer connections keep unfolding. If you felt inspired by Jack's journey, you need to subscribe now and not miss the incredible stories to come. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the positive vibes flowing. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and feelings about Jack's transformative journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this hope and support in their lives. You are a part of this transformative community, and your support means everything.